And we're back. You're listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the #1 global business talk and news network on the internet, IBGR, International Business Growth Radio, the world of business at your fingertips. I am joined here by Gary Goldwasser on the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show. And we are talking about creating lasting value even in a challenging economy. And Gary is a business broker with Transworld Business Advisors of Colorado. And last year they sold all of 52% of all the business sales in Colorado. So he knows a thing or two about what is happening right now in the marketplace. And so what I have challenged Gary to do with me here over the next few minutes is let's talk about trends that might not be around 6 months from now or 12 months from now or even 36 months from now, but like what is happening right now? And so, Gary, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Tell us something weird that you've seen in the marketplace that you've never seen before in the last 30, 45 days.
I would tell you that lenders are taking an exorbitant amount of time to get deals done.
Okay.
And buyers too are slow boating it, or whatever you want to call it. You know, when they get their information into the lender, instead of being done in a week, it's taken them 3-4 weeks to get their package together, and that just pushes off the close date.
Okay. So how does that compare to, say, a couple of years ago? It's 2023 right now. What's June of 21 compared to, June of 23 so far?
Well, June of 21, we had a lot of stimulus going in. The SBA had some pretty good incentives for buyers to buy businesses. And we were coming out of COVID, and a lot of companies were really strong. And today they are too. That really hasn't changed yet.
Okay.
We've been doing this since right around COVID. The companies that did well at COVID are coming out and still doing strong and still going like this.
Okay. And when he says this, just so if you're just listening at home, he's showing a giant upward trajectory as far as the trajectory goes. But no, that's really important because so it sounds like the velocity of deal flow is slowing down. Perhaps the velocity of money or lending into the environment is slowing down because the Federal Reserve has really been pulling back and trying to destroy demand for now 15 months or so, as far as how much they've been increasing the cost of capital, which, in other words, the interest rate. So how does that affect the deals that you're doing?
Well, it pressures down the multiples of what you can get for a business, because again, we have to go back to it has to cash flow the loan amount. So if your business makes $500,000 but the SBA loan is $580,000, that business cannot sell for that dollar amount. And so there's usually a reduction in a purchase price to make it support the debt service from a lender.
Yeah, so
it's a pretty big important part that people aren't thinking about.
Yeah, and I want us to think about that for a moment. So just back of the envelope, if somebody 2 years ago was going to cash out at, say, $500,000, just to put a number out there, now that the cost of capital, if everything else was the same, except now we're dealing with the more expensive cost of capital, how much would somebody need to ratchet down that expectation from $500,000? Are they going to $400,000? Are they going to $350,000? Like, where does that land?
Wow, that's a great question. Right now the interest rate is over 10% on an SBA loan, and 2 years ago was 6.25%. So you're talking about 3.5%. But for instance, I had a deal the other day that when they first started the loan process, it was at, let's call it 6.5%, and now it's at 10.5%. And their debt service monthly payment went from $44,000 to $57,000.
Yeah, and that's a significant change.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you're paying the bank now instead of a few employees, perhaps.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Are there creative mechanisms that you're seeing people employ, whether it's through deal structuring or different, going back to different preparatory methods? What are people doing to mitigate this and still do deals?
Yeah, they're doing a lot more seller financing or seller carry, seller notes.
Okay.
And sometimes it's half or more than half of seller notes. And think about this for a buyer, a seller though. They were getting 6.25% is generally what a seller note was, matching the SBA loan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens if you can get 10.5% on your seller note? That's better money than being in the stock market. So if you've got a good buyer and you've got a good business and it's stable, a seller note is a fantastic way for a seller to, get mailbox money, get it at 10.5% interest.
Yeah.
And kind of have extra cash on the side and help with taxes.
Well, yeah, I like all these things. And I mean, at the end of the day, here's what I appreciate about you, Gary, and this is why you're here today, is you're finding ways to get deals done. Right.
Yep.
I would imagine, and I'm gonna throw you another hot seat question here, and this might be a little bit of a curveball, but I would imagine that you've got some sort of grit or some sort of story in your past where the chips were down and you had to get really creative and make things happen. And that's why, you don't seem fazed by all these weird market gyrations and all this stuff right now at all. Tell us a little bit about, how did you get here so that you're not fazed by all this stuff?
I'm tenacious, and I am persistent and consistent. And, during COVID, we didn't sit underneath a rock. We were actively helping all these small businesses we were working with about how do you get your SBA loan? How do you get a IDL loan? How do you do all of that? We were assisting them. It had nothing to do with us selling a business. And so we took a very proactive approach during that time. And we just want to make sure that, we're taking care of the client is, to the best of their ability. And, so we're constant. I will tell you this, the only thing that kills deals is trust. I always think there's a deal to be made if we have a motivated buyer, motivated seller, and we build rapport with the buyer and seller. We're having them talk during the transaction to get used to each other, to know each other, to understand the business. So we're not a week away from the business going, hey, what's your marketing strategy? Or do you have a W-2 employee? We're having these conversations ahead of time.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing all this, because I noticed the company is called Transworld Business Advisors, right? It's not business brokers. It's not, business transactors or any sort of, word I could make up right now. I think it speaks to the importance of what you're really bringing to the table, which is that day-to-day knowledge of the marketplace itself. But to what you just said, here's how you actually get a deal done. And I love, you threw out the word persistence a couple minutes ago, and you just threw out the word trust. And I think, if you have those two things, magic can happen. And it is, the importance of trust. And maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but a lot of times you've got these business owners, they've been in that business for 30 plus years, probably the better part, if not their entire adult life. What do you do to kind of build that trust, both with you, but then to the eventual acquirer?
Well, I think it is a gift I have that I'm able to make people feel comfortable. I want to learn about their business. Remember, I got in this business because it was too transactional for me. A lot of the brokers I dealt with weren't relational. And so for me, it's relationship first. I want to build a relationship with that buyer and with that seller, and make sure that they feel comfortable, because this is, other than getting married, buying a house, having babies, this is one of the biggest deals you're going to do in your lifetime.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a top 5 deal for sure.
Right.
No, I really like that. And yeah, when you say relationships first, because I know, being in business as long as I have, tactics come and go, seasons of business, recessionary, depressionary, expansionary, neutral, everything in between comes and goes. But if you have relationships that are built on a foundation of trust, you will never go wrong. And so I love that you're coming from that place.
Yeah, I am who I am. I'm genuine. I love business. So when I'm sitting across a seat from a seller, I'm intrigued by their business. I want to know everything about it. I want to know about your kids. I want to know about how you got in this. Why are you from Colorado, or I'm from out of state, and where I want to know you and build trust. And then when I go to the seller and communicate with that seller on a consistent basis, where you take the listing, then you don't hear from your broker for 4 months. We're not like that. We are constant communication.
No, and I can confirm that. Gary knows, because I have brought him some deals over the years, and there are times when he blows up my inbox through his communication to make sure that everything moves forward. So it's a beautiful thing. So as we're kind of wrapping up here today, Gary, let me share something that's available to our listeners. If you go to exitology.com, you can click on Contact Us, and you can actually apply for a Grow to Exit diagnostic session. And what we do is we'll evaluate and benchmark your company against thousands of other companies and really uncover your best options to grow and exit. And the whole reason we're doing that is as a thank you for listening to the show, as a thank you for investing in yourself and your knowledge, and really to just help you go in whatever the correct direction is. Conversely, Gary, what would you like to share with our listeners here as we wrap up this episode?
Well, I think there's always a deal to be had. I never jam a buyer into a seller or a seller into a buyer. It's got to be a good fit. 9 times out of 10, the number one reasons sellers sell, they want to make sure the legacy stays intact and the employees stay intact, ahead of the dollar amount that they get from the business.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, I think you're coming at it from the right direction, and we really appreciate you being on the show today, Gary. Thank you very much. You've been listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the #1 global business talking news network on the internet, IBGR.